Good evening. My name is Adam Jacobi of GoIowaAwesome.com. And today, I have a very special reading for all of you. First, we gonna rock. Then we gonna roll. Then we let it pop. Go and let it go. What? X gonna give it to you. He gonna give it to you. X gonna give it to you. He gonna give it to you. Thank you. It's a great day to be a Hawkeye, isn't it? It's a great day to be a Hawkeye in what is today, tomorrow, and always the Hawkeye State. My name is Adam Jacobi of GoIowaAwesome.com, and you are watching the Wednesday night flagship edition of the Iowa Sports Review. This is our weekly stream webcast. Legally not allowed to call it a sound off, but that's sort of what it is. Our YouTube version of what that would be. So, what is up, everybody? So good to see all of you. And we've got a few things to talk about, don't we? It has been an extremely good day to be a Hawkeye today with the commitment of Xavier Nwankpa. Nwankpa. It's close. I'm getting there. A 5-star recruit, highest ranked in the state of Iowa of the 24/7 sports era, ranked as high as 11th in the nation, universally regarded as the top safety recruit. Hawkeyes landed him over Ohio State and in third place Notre Dame. And no way to put this other than this is the biggest recruiting get for Kirk Ferentz in his entire Iowa career. This is up there with AJ Epinesa. This is up there with Blake Larson back when he had cartilage in his knees. This is up there with Kyle Williams back before he had a criminal record. This is up there with all of that. And I got to tell you, I feel more optimistic for X's career in the black and gold than any of the previous 5 stars panned out. This is a kid with a tremendous head on his shoulders who understands the game of football in a way that transcends even his athletic ability, which is substantial. Obviously, he has to earn his way toward any success he's going to have on the field for the Hawkeyes and in the NFL, and that is obviously the message that has been given to him by the coaches. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you what he's going to do, but I will say that he is capable of being the best Iowa safety since and up to and maybe even including Bob Sanders. He's that good. Great day to be a Hawkeye. And in other sports, we've also got Iowa versus ISU in women's basketball at Hilton Coliseum. Cyclones jumped out pretty early, pretty substantially. Last I saw, they were up by 11. And, okay, so check that. They are winning by 5 at halftime, or at the very least, that's the last alert that I got. So obviously, Hawkeyes have a lot of work cut out for them, a lot to work on in terms of getting their turnovers cleaned out. They're still in the process of rounding back into form after their COVID layoff, and man, it was rough against Duke. This is game 3 back from that layoff, and they look good, getting Bluter her 800th win over the weekend. But ISU, a top 15 program in Hilton, fans who are super motivated to be there. That is a tall, tough order. So the fact that they're only down 5 at the half If anything, it's borderline encouraging. So hopefully they can keep rounding into form. They can actually shut down that Hilton Magic because, gosh, hasn't been a whole lot of reason for Cyclone fans to be excited whenever Iowa comes to town recently. As there. So fingers crossed for them. But yeah, gosh, a whole lot to talk about today. We've even got the Kentucky game finally lined up for the Citrus Bowl. Lots to talk about there. So if you are watching this on Twitter, I think the tweet that had this, there's a link to our YouTube channel. Go ahead and view us down there. You're going to see our chat area, and that is where you can submit your hot takes, your comments, thoughts, questions, fifth way of saying the exact same thing. That's where to do it. So hop on in. All I am is just the pretty face, and gosh, it really is pretty, to say nothing of my voice. Got a little scratchy voice, so my register has gone down a little bit, and I kind of like it. So whatever you've got on your mind, let me know. Let me know. Let's see. So first of all, Xavier Nwankpa. That was certainly a spectacle of sorts. I asked the Go Iowa Awesome gentleman in our Slack channel earlier today, when was the last time that Iowa was even involved in one of these televised, or I guess in this case, like quasi CBS televised, like it had commercials. It was streaming, but streaming counts as TV these days. But when was the last time that Iowa was actually involved in one of these commitments, much less actually getting the recruit that was doing this? And the closest that anybody could come up with was Reggie Spearman, which was back farther long ago than I want to admit, basically. And I mean, nothing against Reggie Spearman. But with a name like that, I really wish that he had been more productive as a football player at the collegiate level. But yeah, that's how long ago. And if there was something even, sooner than that, let me know by all means. But yeah, it's interesting that Iowa usually doesn't play these recruiting games. And part and parcel of that is Iowa doesn't usually go after high 4-star, 5-star type recruits, the type of recruits that, engage in behavior like this. And, I don't think any of it's a knock, right? Because of Xavier Nwankpa does it. And he is as high character as, universally regarded as a high character kid, soft spoken, all of the traits that you would want in a Hawkeye football player. Very, very focused on football first, as opposed to like NIL type stuff. Like he's who you want character wise, being a leader in your secondary. So the fact that he was doing that whole commitment, that whole hat, 3-hat Monty, if you will. I don't think it's indicative of a problem in college sports. And believe me, you're going to find some people who think otherwise. I'm not one of them. But I think it more reflects on the fact that Iowa generally targets guys who are not that much in the spotlight. They just don't garner enough attention to be televised, basically. And it works 80 to 90% of the time. Not a knock on any of that. But it really underscores how special of an event today was. And you also don't often see Iowa go toe-to-toe, like getting that full recruiting effort with the biggest of the big dogs. And especially in the Midwest, Ohio State and Notre Dame, maybe you make the case for Michigan also being in that top 3, but like Ohio State, Notre Dame are always going to get the recruits they want, you would think, right? Right. But Iowa did it. They won. And they have a 5-star safety to show for it. It rules. It super rules. And I'm going to be very interested to see how quickly Nwankpa gets himself on the field. Because remember, Jack Kerner is graduating this year. He's a senior. And, Kayvon Merriweather, he's in that mix. But, gosh, it seems like there's not a whole lot in the way of hurdles for Nwankpa to get on the field. Somebody who's got not only that sheer athleticism, but the maturity, the leadership, and just being able to, make that first step towards the play. He's a rare, rare talent that gets himself in position so frequently. And that's especially good because I don't want to say, like, Jack Kerner, great ambassador for the program, earned his way to a starting role, kept it, good for him. But I got to say, even this season, even this senior season of his, it seemed like there were, whenever a defense would have a big play against the Hawkeyes, which was not often, but it seemed like whenever you would see it, it was sort of predicated on Kerner being one or two steps away from being able to, be that safety valve. And we've got a comment here from Bubbly Golem, which I got to tell you, it sounds cursed. Sounds cursed. Or maybe it's Golem. I don't know. It said Cackert said that they were really interested in throwing him into the cash position. Good Lord, if that's true, look out. Because, gosh, Micah Hooker, great player at the cash. Dane Belton, great player at the cash. Did I say Micah? I think it's Amani Hooker. Sorry, 5 letters. Had an M, an A, and an I. I was close. Monty Hooker. Both great players. And both, Hooker obviously got paid by the Titans. I think that we're going to see the same thing for Belton. Who was the guy in between them that went pro early? I'm drawing a blank on that. Somebody in the chat. But, like, Iowa has had pretty significant success of using players in that position. And, gosh, if you say what you will about Kirk Ferentz, whether he adapts or doesn't adapt, but switching to that quasi 4-2-5 defense has been tremendously successful for the Hawkeyes in terms of, frankly, modernizing their defense for a new era where you don't actually need 3 linebackers on the field at all times. You can say that was overdue. I think I would agree with you, but it's like the old Chinese proverb says, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And that's it, sort of the same thing for updating your football team, right? Like, should they have done it before? Yes, but now's the time to do it, right? This is the best you're going to be able to do. So I was really happy to see them turn their defense into something leaner, something that they can actually be more aggressive without, while still putting the other 10 guys in position to succeed. Love everything about the cash position. X would be a monster there if that's what they want to do. I trust him in one-on-one coverage. I trust him in zone. I trust him, rushing the quarterback or run blitzing. You can trust him to do whatever you want. He might even be one of the 2 best wide receivers on the 2022 team, which, Keegan Johnson, Arlen Bruce there is saying a lot. X might be as talented as them too. And I'm not saying put him on offense because his career, where he's going to get multiple commas in his paychecks, his career is at defensive back. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. But it speaks to the level of talent that he's got that, if there's some sort of disaster, let's say, nothing bad, but let's say Bruce and Keegan Johnson get on the wrong bus and it goes to the wrong football stadium. I guess it never happens, but or they get locked in the locker room. I don't know. But in case of emergency, and I don't want to bring up scenarios where they get hurt. I don't like that. But in case of some sort of emergency, he's talented enough to play receiver too. I don't think he's ever going to work on that playbook, but he's there. He's that kind of athlete. And what's really cool is he has the success, at least at the high school level, to back up that athleticism. Like, he already is versed in putting that into action. Great to see. So yeah, got to be thrilled about that. Got to be thrilled. But there is more to his recruitment than that, because Southeast Polk also has guys like Brody Breck they already got. Kyler Casper, son of Kevin Casper, right? Big time receiver prospect for the 2023 class. They're certainly working on him. But the big fish, if you want to call a 330-pound teenager a fish, is Caden Proctor. He is a top 10 recruit among all recruits in the 2023 class. Highest ranked offensive lineman. 5-star, obviously, wanted by everybody. And there were a few little rumblings that he could be a package deal with Nwankpa. Now, whether that plays out or not, we'll see. There's a whole year of getting Proctor to this point in his recruitment where X is. Whether he wants to commit sooner than this, whether he wants to commit later than that, we'll see. We'll find out. But this is a big, big piece of the puzzle to get him in Iowa City too. And if you've watched film on him, man, it really looks like Tristan Wirfs 2.0. And that's a great thing to have, isn't it? So there's a whole lot, like, this by itself is a big splash, a huge splash in recruiting. 24/7 mentioned that it brings Iowa's class rank up 13 points just by itself in the nation. And some of that is a little depressed just because Iowa has not a ton of recruits in this class. It's going to be a pretty small class, all things considered. That pushes them down. But not only do they get X, but stars like to play with stars. Proctor probably, those two are buddies. Caden said that he talks with X, works out with X every day. And they talk about this sort of stuff. He said that in an interview today. Obviously, you're going to take him at his word on that. And there were so many rumblings about this being a package deal. Got to think that that's still going to be the case, more or less. So obviously, reason to be excited about that. Also, if there are recruits from, I don't know, outside of Southeast Polk that are paying attention to these developments and they want to play with X, here you go. We'd love to see it. We'd love to see it. But, that is, that's all for the days, weeks, months, year to come. But definitely some stronger footing for Iowa recruiting right now than we've had in a long time. And there's one other thing that was notable, I thought. A lot of the coverage about Iowa's recruitment of Nwankpa was that the name, image, likeness situation was probably going to be more beneficial to him in Iowa City than it would be in Columbus or South Bend. Not because the Buckeyes or Irish are toiling in obscurity or anything like that. Not at all. But that as a hometown or home state recruit, as someone who is the crown jewel of his own class, that he's already coming into that situation with more notoriety, more of a shot at immediate playing time, and furthering that that local buzz. There's more people, there's more entities, more businesses that want to attach their name to X's name. More of those in Iowa than there would be in Ohio or Indiana. We don't even know when he would get playing time there. And that's certainly not an insult to those two programs. It speaks to their levels of talent. But given that, which you would think would be certainly a benefit, when Chris Hassel asked him during that televised segment, he said, that's all fine and good. It's not what is informing my decision, that he's going to school which a little bit of a slip. I don't know if you want to call it a Freudian slip or not, but he said that he's going to school to play football, ... and work toward his degree. But come on, he's there to play football. And I appreciate that honesty, honestly. I've thought for years that there ought to be a way to make football an academic major, that there's so much actual studying involved in that, so much time and investment involved in it, and so many like different applications of academia that you could attach to it. Now, the central tenet of a major program is that there's field level courses that you're supposed to be able to academically progress. And if somebody can come in and start right away as a true freshman, it sort of throws that concept on its head. But nonetheless, I've always thought that if somebody is investing that much time and attention into a pursuit like this in the name of the university, not dissimilar to somebody who goes to school for ballet, for violin, or for what have you. It's just that this is violence, not violin. But I've always, I've always thought that there should be some sort of, academic credit one way or the other. If they're giving that much time to football for that school, they should be a little bit more rewarded than they are just from a credit standpoint. But again, I'm not academic in any way, and my report cards would bear that out. Believe me. Maybe I'm barking up a dead tree at this point, but it's certainly I have no problem with X saying that he's going to Iowa to play football first. Obviously, part of being eligible is making progress toward his degree, but he also said that he's going to Iowa for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, either he is going to study like a madman and get his degree in 3 years, or the message is also he's going to be good enough to go pro immediately, and that would not surprise me one bit. So, but he did say his primary focus is to play, to get better at football, to be the best player he can be, to progress in his degree. Obviously, he's going to have to do that if he wants to play football. But he really demurred at the idea that NIL was going to be more of a factor to get him into Iowa as opposed to Columbus or South Bend. And honestly, that makes me feel better as an Iowa football fan. The fact that he looked at Ohio State and Notre Dame, who put tons of players in the NFL, and said that his future was going to be, as a football player, his future was going to be brightest in Iowa City. Love it. Love it. I do hope that he gets a significant windfall from NIL too. I just like seeing money in athletes' pockets. That's what I like. Ray Zirkelback, good to see you, old friend. Clemson quarterback who's recruited by Iowa entered the transfer portal today. Maybe wishful thinking. Yeah, it might be. Was it the gentleman with the Southeast Asian looking name, who I'm not going to be able to pick off the top of my head, obviously. But somebody asked me just this afternoon, about Iowa in the transfer portal. And I got to tell you, I am not optimistic for them picking up a quarterback. And here's why. They have two quarterbacks on the roster right now. I don't know whether either of them are going to be on the roster next season, but I would be pretty sure one of them is. But they have two quarterbacks right now who have started and won Big Ten games. They can make the case that they're Big Ten ready right away. And so for Iowa to go up and over the top of both of them for someone who, let's be honest, couldn't keep the Clemson job. One, I think both quarterbacks would feel a little bit betrayed. Two, I'm not sure that it would really solve the problems surrounding this offense. I really don't. And three, it seems like that would be taking attention away from other transfers that at positions that might be better suited to helping the 2022 team. Defensive end, I think, would be at the top of my list, and I know that LSU just lost a really highly rated recruit from last year's class to the transfer portal. Played a little bit this season, and whose name I have already forgotten. But that would be the sort of transfer that I would love to see Iowa go after. While at the same time, I fully acknowledge that they probably weren't involved in that process when he was being recruited out of high school, so there probably isn't a relationship there. But the transfer portal makes strange bedfellows. We'll put it that way. And if Iowa is the most prominent defense in dire need of a defensive end, which is possible, I haven't looked at the other great defenses of the NCAA, but I would say Iowa is pretty far up there. And replacing Zach Van Valkenburg is not going to be easy. So we'll see if they've got the talent on the roster right now, or if they need a little bit of a boost for the 2022. We'll see. But I could see that happening a lot more easily than I could see a quarterback happening. And ultimately, they don't take a ton of transfers to begin with. They do take a few. Zach Van Valkenburg I would be the first that comes to mind. Charlie Jones was a transfer from Buffalo. So when they do take transfers, it's rarely from another Power 5 school. It's more usually somebody who feels like they're hitting their ceiling at that lower level and they want to play at a Power 5 school for the first time. So somebody coming from Clemson, for the several reasons that I just mentioned, I don't see it. Would I want to see it? Perhaps. If I were more familiar with this guy, perhaps. I will say this for the future of the quarterback position. That 24/7, not too long ago, posted a crystal ball for a young man. Iowa crystal ball. You get to watch me while I do a Google. It's not boring at all. That's my song. Anyway, 24/7 just posted a crystal ball for a gentleman by the name of Marco Lainez III out of Princeton. He's built like a linebacker, 6'2", 220. But his highlight reel on 24/7, very interesting. If anything, kind of looks like an Adrian Martinez / like Northwestern prototypical guy who's very mobile in the pocket. Can run himself into a clean pocket, if that makes any sense. We'll see how much Iowa really wants a QB like that. But they do have him projected to the Hawkeyes, and over some pretty decent. I'll bring him back up here. Over some pretty decent competition, like Michigan State was the most prominent. Like they're the two like warm schools on 24/7. Let me see if I can share this real quick. The answer is yes, I can. This is a good song that's just coming out of my mouth, so it's not dead air. Stanley size but mobile, not quite as big as Stanley. We're talking 6'2", 220 is what he's listed at right now. Share screen, Chrome tab. Love it. Bloop. Okay. So this is our guy, like I said, 6'2", 220, 4-star recruit. We like that. 3 stars to 24/7, but in that sort of borderline area. Pretty well regarded as a borderline top 20 QB. We like that. So yeah, you see we've got offers also from the likes of Illinois, Louisville. And if you look at this right here, Huddle, please don't sue me. But you're looking at a quarterback who, yeah, using his feet, throwing on the run. We could use that, couldn't we? Again, pocket mobility. If he wants to take off and run, he's got that athleticism to do so. Is he going to be able to do that against Big Ten defenses? Probably needs to improve that athleticism, but college is where you do it, and Iowa in particular. But yeah, you can see that he's really using his feet, but he's able to do so. Pretty strong arm, especially for just his junior year. And, enough athleticism that he can take off from the pocket on design runs, and it's going to look a lot better than, say, when Nate Stanley did it. And love Nate Stanley, but room for improvement there, to say the least. So, yeah, if you want to look at the entire 10-minute highlight reel, which out of respect for 24/7 and Huddle, we're not going to show the entire thing. That's not fair to them. But it is available on his 24/7 profile screen. And honestly, I like the looks of this guy. If he can, refine the footwork just a little bit, he doesn't have a whole lot of work to do. And gosh, he's making plays that we haven't seen an Iowa QB make, just in terms of being able to be creative out of the pocket. Best playmaker on the run since Drew Tate in an Iowa uniform. At quarterback, certainly. You can make that case. I think that he compares favorably to the likes of why did I just draw a blank here? Alex Padilla. That's his name, Alex Padilla. A little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and you really have to be in the Big Ten, especially if you're going to be on the run. He looks like he's built for contact. And to have all of that, to have that live arm, to be able to, move your way into a passing lane, still have your eyes up and be able to deliver on target on the move. Yeah, man, that looks like sort of a melange of Drew Tate, Adrian Martinez, Alex Padilla. The only downside is the closest comp I can think of is Rocky Lombardi. And Rocky did not have a productive Big Ten career, to say the least. But he did just win the MAC, right? Like, he's a conference championship quarterback now. Now, we saw that he wasn't going to get that done in Michigan State. Bummer. But this kid looks like a bigger Rocky Lombardi, and honestly making better throws than Rocky did. So he is slated to join the Hawkeye class of 20. Which class is he? 2023, right? So he's not even going to be on the field, or he's not going to be in town even next season. This is a ways away. But they are, at the very least, actively involved in bringing in guys who have a more of a 21st century quarterback skill set. We'll put it that way. So make of that what you will. But yeah, the future's a little bit bright there in terms of the future of the quarterback position, regardless of any sort of transfer portal activity that really stands a possibility of rubbing the locker room the wrong way. We'll put it that way. We are already 35 minutes into today's broadcast. So a little bit of a reset for everybody. My name is Adam Jacobi. Go IowaAwesome.com, and you are watching the Iowa Sports Review Wednesday night flagship edition. And so if you're watching on Twitter, there should be a link to today's YouTube page, but it's just Iowa Sports Review on YouTube. Pretty easy to find, honestly. So go ahead, hop into the chat if you're there, and let us know your thoughts. Talk some smack to the people that are around you. It's a great day to be a Hawkeye. You might as well. And also, we've got the Iowa State game going on in Ames right now. So a little bit of an update on that one. Fingers crossed that it's good news for the Hawkeyes. Scores. 6-point game in the fourth quarter. 67-61. Bad girls. Bad ladies. I don't know. You shouldn't call them. Whatever the female version of bad guys is. Bad dames? The bad dames. The bad dolls. Anyway, Iowa down 6, middle of the fourth quarter. Caitlin Clark, we need you now more than ever. Let's get that dub in Ames and continue today's wave of good feelings. We truly love to see it. All right. Our chat is slow today. Don't always like to see that. So, babies, I got to ask you, this is your 2-minute warning on chats. If we don't see any more, we will call tonight, and I will give you all back the last few minutes to cheer on our Hawkeyes on television, and hopefully keep the haters, the naysayers, keep them upset at the Hawkeyes, because boy, they would be mad today, wouldn't they? They would be so mad. One thing that I do want to point out that that was mentioned by Nwankpa, Iowa was going up against some big dogs, and the Hawkeyes were not always thought of as favorites. And according to X, the moment that really flipped him into a Hawkeye lean, if you will, was, believe it or not, the Penn State game, which remains and probably will remain for a long time the best Hawkeye home game environment we've seen in a long time. And X was in the house for that, as were 50 other recruits, and he mentioned that the sheer atmosphere, the energy from the crowd, student section chanting "We want X," all of that played into him turning into a Hawkeye lean. So between that, the 5 Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year awards, up to and including Riley Moss, they turned Riley Moss into the best defensive back in the Big Ten, as voted on by everybody. That is not insignificant stuff. And the fact that they're in position to, have a guy with all the tools, like Xavier Nwankpa, the fact that he was able to see that sort of value proposition as somebody who has a whole lot of upside, it's an easier sell to somebody who is, I don't know, committed to Central Michigan, right? If somebody's just a MAC lean and Iowa comes and says, hey, you've got NFL potential, jumping at that, no questions asked, it totally makes sense. But for a 5-star recruit to listen to an Iowa staff that famously does not promise anything other than a chance to compete, the fact that he was able to look at everything Iowa has to offer and says, that is my best bet. Hopefully it has a ripple effect of other 4- and 5-star recruits. One, recognizing the same thing, but 2, Iowa's recruiting staff saying, we've got a winning proposition, right? We can actually offer more than the big dogs can offer. Like, does it help that Nwankpa, grew up in Iowa? Of course it does. Of course, like if he was in Kansas City, I'm not sure we're even making the Final Five. But the fact that Iowa was in on it, especially when everyone came calling, like I figured as soon as Clemson offered him that he was not staying in state one way or the other. So, like, huge victory on that front alone, and hopefully Iowa's recruiting staff can, make that value proposition to other 5-star recruits successfully too. Oh, Dan mentions this is from an article by old Daily Iowan friend Todd Brommelkamp. What's up, Todd? He and I were actually on the same staff briefly. He covered football. I covered women's rowing. So I won. Anyway, Todd wrote a really cool article just the other day, and Dan, if you want to send me the link in a private chat, I'll get that shared on screen. But one of the things that Todd mentioned was the possibility, and there weren't any specifics because this isn't actually like a prediction or anything, but it sure seems like the most likely outcome, even though there's like no specifics attached to it. But in one way or another, one of the things or the way that Todd opens this article is saying, at some point there's going to be some job in the NFL, and this point's probably going to come sooner rather than later. But at some point there's going to be some job in the NFL where Brian Ferentz gets named, let's say, offensive coordinator, or tight ends coach, or something lucrative, something that would certainly be a step up from Iowa offensive coordinator. And there's going to be a whole lot of hype around that. A lot of talk about this being a natural progression of his career. And in most ways, that would be the case if his last name were anything but Ferentz. But of course, his last name is Ferentz. And of course, the plan, which was always on the wall, and anyone who suggests otherwise is lacking in credibility or lacking in common sense, one of the two. But the plan was, of course, to have Brian succeed Kirk as head coach of the Hawkeyes. That's why you have him on the staff. It's obvious. Now, of course, also, the last 2 seasons in particular, but even going back to when he decided to cuss out the referees on a totally valid call in the press box. I'm old enough to remember that. But the plan was always for him to replace Kirk, and I think the last 3 years, for an abundance of reasons, on and off field, have shown that he's not really ready to be there yet. So this, whatever NFL move, even though it would probably be best for his career, it's not the ideal move. It's not ideal for Kirk, for Brian, for anybody, but it might be necessary. And so, especially for a coach who famously doesn't fire assistants, like if you think Kirk is firing Brian for anything other than like keying his car and kidnapping his dog, I assume Kirk has a dog. Out of the question completely. But helping him into an NFL role, making it look as natural and as logical as possible. That seems to be sort of Iowa's tempo, and it seems to be Kirk's tempo too. But I think it is a possibility bordering on plausibility that that's going to be the case. Probably sooner rather than later. And honestly, it would be the best for Brian at this point. Because right now, and By the way, the report has also been that Kirk told his players that he's going to be back for multiple years. So whatever fantasy you had in mind of there being a replacement, I don't know, named Bob Stoops in Iowa City in 2022, put it aside. And not even Todd mentioned the idea. Oh, here we go. Thank you, Dan. I actually decided to look. So we will do a little quick screen share here. Share screen. We're singing again to the fork in the road. That's the name of the article. There isn't even any beat to this song. It's a bad song. But anyway, go to KGym Radio, KGYM radio.com. It's right there by Todd Brommelkamp. Boom. And so Todd does a much better writing than I do saying out loud the situation here. Highly recommended as a read. Todd's always been great. And let's see, I think we can stop sharing that now. But yeah, go ahead and read that article. And it's hard to come to any other conclusion that a change of scenery is exactly what Brian Ferentz needs. Now, as Ray in the comments points out, what it does, and as Todd points out too, creating a void at offensive coordinator under Kirk Ferentz also sort of feels like a deck chairs / Titanic move, doesn't it? You can shudder at Ken O'Keefe coming back. I agree. But I think you can also make the case that Ken O'Keefe was the best offensive coordinator of the three that Kirk Ferentz has had. I mean, low bars, super low bars, but you can make that case. And so, if a move like this, even if it's beneficial to Brian, but if all it does is restore Ken O'Keefe to a position that he had 15 years ago, it's a lateral move at best. At the very least, I think the passing dynamics, especially the drop back passing game, I think that you would see something that is at the very least a little bit more coherent than it's been. But I don't think that you would see Iowa, jump into the top 25 in offensive efficiency yet. There is so much that is predictable about this offense. And I think if you look for an internal candidate to replace any of this, you're going to be bumping up against the same ceiling as always. But, for as much as you want to say about how Kirk Ferentz does not evolve, we just talked about him evolving his 4-2-5 defense and what incredible success, unqualified success he's gotten out of that cash position. And a big part of that is because Phil Parker knew what he was doing and he had complete trust of Kirk Ferentz. If they can bring in, if they can bring in an offensive coordinator that says, hey, your second down tendencies were disastrous. And they were disastrous. Look up Cody Hills on Twitter. Within the last couple days, he posted a really rudimentary breakdown of Iowa's second down offense this season. And this is catastrophic from a football standpoint. After an incomplete pass on first down this season, so 2nd and 10 after an incomplete pass, Iowa ran the ball 87% of the time. That is catastrophic. That is a tendency that screams out loud in 72-point font. And Jim Harbaugh and Michigan's defense took full advantage of it. It was that predictable. And you can see how it makes sense from a high-level standpoint. If nobody's charting your plays, then of course you don't want a 3rd and 10, so you run and try to get however many yards you can. That's how it makes sense if nobody's paying attention to your tendencies. Unfortunately, it looks like the only coaching staff that wasn't paying attention to Iowa's tendencies was Iowa's. That's a problem. That's an enormous problem. And I don't know if you want to ascribe that to Kirk, to Brian, to the grad assistants who should be tracking these things. But it needs to be fixed immediately. Whoever, whatever staff is in charge of that, they need to fix it pronto. Because if it is obvious and predictable to us on the couch, it was. And if that number is, 87% can never happen. The only tendency that should be 87% or more is center snaps the ball to the quarterback. That's it. That's it. Everything else, you need to have some sort of variation that defenses can't key on like their lives depend on it. And at 87%, that's exactly what they can and will do. And that's why you saw so many instances of Tyler Goodson lining up 2nd and 10 and running straight into unblocked defenders. Part of that was the offensive line struggled badly this year. Part of it was because defensive coordinators knew exactly what play was coming in that scenario. Part of that, because you had such bad offensive line play this year, aside from Tyler Linderbaum, which, man, go get paid, but we're going to need him next year, or we're going to miss him next year. Part of that was because that line was not giving its quarterbacks time. Cody Hills also found out that on 1st and 10 in passing, when Iowa was going to pass the ball on 1st and 10, not Nate Stanley, Spencer Petras, shocking that I would confuse those two, yes, but Petras in particular threw incomplete passes 54% of the time. So that is consider the implications there. That if all you did was see Petras drop back to pass or, taking a shotgun snap, because those shotgun plays were almost universally passes. Parse that how you want. But if all you did was see Petras back to throw on 1st down, on 1st and 10, you could be relatively sure that this was going to end in 3rd and long. That is that is so bad for an offense. And Padilla, at the very least, give him this. He was up to 60% on those 1st and 10 passing plays. And that is substantial. That's substantially better. If you give them a better offensive line, I think that starts to even out, but it's not a better offensive line. So, if the line play continues to suffer, I think it's obvious that Padilla gives your offense the best chance to succeed. If the offensive line play does improve, I think you start to get closer to Petras being that guy, but that's a big, big if you're losing Tyler Linderbaum, isn't it? So we're going to find out a whole lot about Iowa's offensive line development under George Barnett. As one of my co-writers at Go Iowa Awesome said in a Slack today, and I've already forgotten who it was, probably Ross, but this offseason and the 2022 season are going to be instrumental in learning whether Barnett, just sort of had a hiccup, whether he was saddled with a really, really young slate of talent, or if he's really not up to this job at the Big Ten level. Because Iowa cannot keep having a bad offensive line in the Big Ten. They got so lucky this year, playing so many bad offenses for their defense to just light up that, they ended up being in competitive position and winning a lot of really competitive close games. Their losses were not competitive, though. And if they keep bumping up against teams that really know what they're doing on offense, and they keep asking their defenses to have superhuman performances just to keep a game close, that's not sustainable. It's never been sustainable. And I think that we're going to look back on this season as a very improbable 10, maybe even 11 win year. And I also think because of that, just want to get this plausibility out there. I think we need to be sort of bracing ourselves for the possibility that next year's team is going to be better on paper. We might even have a better point differential, but might not get to 10 wins in the regular season. And that does not mean that the team has gotten worse. But it does mean that, football is a game of luck as much as anything. That not all of that luck might go Iowa's way next season, especially if they're not turning opponents over at such a ridiculous rate. I like Phil Parker. He's the guy you want if you want to keep turning opponents over. But if they don't have that same amount of success doing, making those huge plays on defense and on special teams, they're going to miss Charlie Jones on that front, aren't they? You could see a better Iowa team go like 8-4, not make the Big Ten championship. Doesn't mean it's a step back. It means that they're getting themselves into a more sustainable position of success. We'll say that. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see. I think a whole lot of that offensive staff really has a lot of work to do to get this team more competitive on that side of the ball. Because otherwise, it's just great defense after great defense bumping up against that ceiling of success that, even for a team that doesn't recruit a ton of superstars, it feels like that ceiling shouldn't be there. So, whole lot to learn on that front. Anyway, man, we've been online for almost an hour already, and chat has wound down. I think I'll be winding down with you all. So thank you all for joining us on a very successful Wednesday. One last check of the Hawkeyes. Fingers crossed. Down 6 with 14 seconds to go. Why Ames? Why Ames? Why the Cyclones? Not going to let it bother me, though. So with that, thank you all for joining and sticking around. My name is Adam Jacobi. GoIowaAwesome.com, and you have been watching the Iowa Sports Review Wednesday night flagship edition. So with that, thank you all. If you've enjoyed this, go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe if you have not already, and if you have subscribed, one, thank you. Two, go ahead and send this to your friends. Anybody that you want to share this space with. Talk a little bit of smack with them in the chat, this or that. Sharing is always caring. Whatever we can do to keep bumping up our subscriber numbers and keep hitting our goals, which we've done a great job of so far, always appreciate it. So with that, shouts out to everybody who has supported this channel, this video, who has chatted, Ray, Bubbly, all of y'all. I don't think we saw Joe today. Wow, weird. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. My name is Adam Jacobi. Go Iowa Awesome. Go Hawks.